Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm about 6 days late, but I want to talk about this news from Fujifilm as they unveil the development of their first filmmaking camera, which they're calling the Fujifilm GFX Eterna. Before we get further into the video, if you've not done it yet, please subscribe to the channel and like the video because it really helps me out in bringing you more content like this. And yeah, let's talk about this camera. This is super exciting, and if you've watched my channel for any length of time, you know that I did travel to Las Vegas to work for Fujifilm, and in return, they gave me a XH2S, which I use as my main camera at the moment. The reason that I use it as my main camera is because I have actually just fallen in love with the image quality. Now I'm having a lot of issues with the audio, so I'm doing some workarounds to get better audio synced with my video. But when it comes to the image quality and the film LUTs that they actually provide, I have never worked with an image that I like that much, and I use this over my Red. My Red has a place in my production company, but when it comes to just the day-to-day stuff, I'm normally picking up the Fujifilm XH2S. And as you can see, I had to basically buy a bunch of stuff to turn it into a workable production camera or cinema camera, if you will. Well, what this new camera kind of offers is all of it packaged into one, and we're going to go through some of the things that we know about the camera so far. It's not a lot, and my friend Johnny from CineD has a pretty good video talking with one of the developers at what was it, Interby 2024. So make sure you go check that out at CineD's YouTube channel. But without further ado, let's talk about what we actually know about the camera. Okay guys, so we have two images up right now that Fujifilm has posted on their website of what the cinema camera actually looks like. And they're actually calling it a film camera. And I think the reason they're doing that is because a lot of the people that are currently using their cameras for video are using them for documentaries and not just scripted narrative work. And so I think they're trying to make a distinction between, cinema camera, they're thinking is like a Red or an Arri Alexa that is used for narrative scripted work, whereas this can be used for that, but I think they're even anticipating it being more for documentary filmmakers and maybe web content and things like that. But with that being said, the sensor in it is not going to be the same as the one that is in the XH2S. The XH2S is like a 35mm sensor. Basically, the sensor that's in this camera is going to be the one that matches up with the GFX Mark II, and the sensor is the GFX 102 megapixel CMOS 2 HS sensor, and they say that that is about 1.7 times larger than the 35mm sensor, or a 35mm sensor. And then they have the same processor that's in that camera, the X Processor 5. Now, I don't have a lot of experience with the GFX cameras or the Mark II, but when I was at NAB hanging out with the Fujifilm people, which was a freaking blast, those guys were awesome. I did, and they forced me. They said, hey, take this camera for an hour, walk around and take pictures with it. And the images that I was taking and seeing through the electronic viewfinder were astonishing. Like, I've never seen images that good with my naked eye. And it made me want the camera so bad, but then I saw the price tag and I was like, can I have one? And they're like, no. Maybe one day I'll get one. But I can tell you that the image is just out of this world. And I know those cameras are used for really large, well, it's a medium format, but they're used for really large productions and photography. So like if you were going to be printing on the side of a building or a billboard or something like that, and you still wanted that really crisp, high quality, or you're printing to a very large canvas or something like that, for photographers, it is a no-brainer. If you can afford it and afford the data, I think it's worth it. So kind of take what I just said about that photography camera and throw it into this filmmaking camera. Now, what I personally am excited about is the color science, because Fujifilm can't really compete with Canon and Sony on a lot of different areas, and one of the main ones is autofocus. That seems to be the talk of everybody's concern. That doesn't concern me, and I get a lot of hate in my comments on my Fujifilm videos because people say, test the autofocus. What's the autofocus like? Why aren't you talking about the autofocus? Guys, I worked on a TV show where the DP, worked on a TV show for a few years, 3 to 4 years, where the DP would not let me use autofocus, and it was a blessing. Like, I'm so glad he did that because I don't use autofocus at all. I use autofocus in this video because I'm using a Canon R, and the autofocus is so good, and it just makes sense for like a talking head thing when I'm filming myself. But when I'm using my camera to make documentaries, to make content, I don't use autofocus. I just got so good at pulling my own focus that, to be honest, the autofocus is worse in my Canon C200 or in my R than if I just do it myself, because it likes to jump and hunt, and it's really good, but even those little micro movements, I don't think they look professional. So I can just pull focus just as fast, and I know my lenses, you know, like learn your lenses. Like I know how much throw it needs to get, you know, from 2 feet to 10 feet, and it's just an instinct at this point. So autofocus is not an issue for me. And I'm sure that they're working on their autofocus because they do want to compete with Canon and Sony. But for me, it's a non-issue. I could care less. What I'm more concerned about and excited about is Fujifilm's color. Now, we know that Fujifilm makes film stock and has made film stock for, you know, they're almost at 100 years of making film stock. And I've reviewed a lot of their instant cameras, which I'm a huge fan of, and I carry them everywhere because I like digital and I like, you know, film as well. But when I started using the XH2S and started using their their LUTs that they make, which is really nice too, because you're not going to places to hunt LUTs and paying extra money. You can just download the LUTs straight from Fujifilm's website, slap them on, and they look so good. Do a little curve, and you're pretty much good to go. And it's just taken so much of the color grading woes out of my workflow. And I truly just love the color that comes out of my XH2S. I love it so much. So I just feel like, obviously, that's going to translate into this camera. And I had experience with the GFX Mark II, 100 Mark II. And I saw it right there in camera. So their color is really their strong suit. And I'm hoping they lean into that. Now, what it does look like they're doing is they're kind of leapfrogging the middle. I don't know what this camera is going to cost. I don't know if it's been reported. It's not reported here, but I don't imagine that this is going to be trying to compete with, you know, the $6,000 to $8,000 range of cameras like the R5C or stuff like that. I think they're going to go ahead and leapfrog up into a little bit higher level because the autofocus is not going to be there. This is going to be marketed and sold as a filmmaking camera that doesn't have autofocus, that it might need another operator if that's something you need, or is going to require a talented operator that can pull his own focus, which you should be able to do. But they're also going to be releasing a lens, a power zoom lens with this camera. And I don't know if it'll come out right at the same time, but it's basically designed for this camera, and they will have an adapter to put PL mount lenses on the camera. Of course, people like me who have just a ton of RF glass or EF glass, we'll have to figure out a way to get our glass on there too. Now, just looking at the camera, you know, you can see there's a record button on the front, which is typical of a cinema camera. There's a 5-point pin, it looks like, on the side for maybe time code. There's some SDIs here that I can see. A lot of function buttons, which is nice. A little screen on the side, which kind of reminds me of the Blackmagic Pixis design or even the Komodo. There's a dial here on the front, and when I watched Johnny's video on CineD, there was talk. The developer wasn't like very convincing, in my opinion, in terms of what he knew was going to be happening in development with the camera. He was kind of vague about things, but when Johnny brought up there being some sort of internal ND, whether it be variable or hard stops, The guy he was talking to made it clear. This was like one thing he did make clear, that there will be internal ND, and I think this dial might be a variable ND, which would be really nice. Anytime you can get ND inside of the camera, it's great because you can eliminate, you know, different mods that you have to do to get that ND, which comes with some drawbacks depending on how much money you have to spend. If you're not buying, you know, hard NDs that go in your matte box, which are expensive and cumbersome to change out, then you have to go to the variable ND, which ultimately is going to have some sort of color shift. So if we have ND in the camera manufactured by the camera company, the color shift is going to be less and maybe even none. So overall, guys, I am super excited about this. With, you know, we're still waiting for the XH2S firmware update, and personally, I've been doing great with my camera. I just shot a documentary, which I'll link down in the description. It's a web series about some nice people who own a coffee roastery. So check that out. That's all shot on the XH2S. I've been doing podcasts for 2 different clients using the XH2S, and everything's been going smooth. I would like to see that firmware update because my audio is still, I don't know if they're going to fix the audio, but the audio is still trash. I can't figure out how to get good audio piped into it. I can get some decent audio that can be cleaned up later, but I just can't get really, really good audio into that camera. But I'm saying all that to say that don't expect this to be a hard drop and it's ready to go. Fujifilm is a great company, especially on the photography side. It seems like they have so much experience there that, you know, they've kind of worked out the kinks. But on the video side, they do tend to have to clean up their mistakes ongoingly or after releases. And maybe this will be an opportunity for them to change that. Maybe when this camera comes out, it'll be ready to go. The bugs will be very minimal. But I wouldn't sell all your cameras to get this and then have a shoot the next day. You get what I'm saying? Like, you might need a little time to work out the kinks with this camera. And if this camera's in the $8,000 to $12,000 price range, I would definitely consider it. It might be a lot more, you know, depending on how much they're charging for that sensor, because I'm pretty sure the GFX 100, don't quote me on it, is over $8,000 for the body. So you're looking at that plus whatever they're charging for all this other, you know, filmmaking features. And I don't see any, you know, this is super early, guys. I'm sure they're going to come out with more videos talking about this, but I don't see any pro audio inputs at this point on these 2 images, like XLRs or even like a mini XLR or anything like that. So, you know, it remains to be seen if we'll get that on the camera. Audio has not been their strong suit, as I just mentioned, but overall, I love Fujifilm. I'm, you know, a big advocate for them. I appreciate them bringing me to Las Vegas this year and getting to meet the team and work with them. And, you know, when I took this camera home, I thought, okay, this will be a good B or C camera. But honestly, guys, it's just my A camera right now. I just love it so much. And it is the only camera that I have that shoots 4K 60. And I love the open gate too. I use open gate a lot, which really eats up your hard drives. But overall, I just really love the camera, so I'm really excited about this. Do me a favor, guys, please do subscribe to the channel and like the video. It really helps me out, and it helps me keep bringing you content like this. All right, guys, I will see you in the next video. Peace.